It was a Friday, I was at home, and as many know, this is the day many people look forward to having fun, going out, meeting friends, and enjoying the night. But that Friday, something was different. There was a weight on my heart, a strange feeling, as if a dark cloud had hung over me. I simply didn't feel like going out. Something inside me was telling me clearly, if you leave today, you won't come home. This thought wouldn't leave my mind, and the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. A deep fear, a dread I'd never felt before, took hold of me. Soon, I heard knocking on the door. It was my friends calling me. "Mario, let's go, the party's starting, come quickly." No matter how hard I tried to respond, I couldn't. It was as if my mouth was stuck shut, sealed by an invisible force. Something was even preventing me from getting up to open the door, and as they insisted, knocking harder, the certainty within me only grew. If I left, I wouldn't come back alive. Fear consumed me. After much insistence, my friends realized I really wouldn't open the door. Little by little, they left, probably without understanding what was happening to me. I stayed home, lay down on the couch, turned over, and without realizing it, I ended up falling deeply asleep. I remember looking at the time, it was around 9 p.m., and closing my eyes. However, as soon as I closed them, it seemed like I opened them again at the same moment. But to my astonishment, I was no longer in my body. My face was literally glued to the living room ceiling, as if I were glued there. Not understanding what was happening, I looked down and, to my shock, saw my own body lying on the couch, asleep. I wondered how I could be here on the ceiling and at the same time, there on the couch. I felt like a gaseous balloon rising to the ceiling and swaying, floating from side to side. I tried to push myself down with my hands, wanting to return to my body, but every time I tried, it was as if a force pulled me back, and my face would hit me on the ceiling again. I tried this once, twice. The third time, I realized that my body remained there, calm, motionless, as if nothing was happening. Suddenly, I began to spin slowly at first, but within seconds I spun faster and faster, as if I were being sucked somewhere. At that moment, I began to hear dark, evil, demonic laughter echoing around me. It was like being inside a scene from a horror movie, only everything was real. The sound sounded like a time machine, something like a whirlwind, and then, in the blink of an eye, I was thrown into a place completely unknown, a vast, dark environment, filled with darkness. Everything was death. The trees were dry, twisted, and lifeless. The ground was made of gray, dirty, heavy sand. I couldn't look back. My spiritual body only moved slowly forward, as if an invisible force were guiding me. I soon realized that I was not alone. 5 demonic entities surrounded me. They wore black robes and looked like witches or wizards, and their appearance was horrifying. Some had the faces of rats, others of bats, deformed creatures, and waves, just like those seen in Hollywood horror movies. But now I knew that these movies were not mere fantasy. Something very real was before me, because Hollywood is inspired by the Antichrist, by witches and wizards who actually see these creatures, but the real ones were 10 times larger, stronger, and more terrifying. These creatures' eyes were disturbing colors, some yellow, some green, some red, but they were not pretty eyes. Quite the contrary, they were filled with hatred. A hatred so deep, so intense, that if a human being experienced that feeling, their heart would be unable to bear it. It would simply explode instantly. I realized my hands were stretched out in front of me, and something strange was happening. I wasn't walking, I was sliding as if I were being carried out of control. There were heavy chains on my arms, with enormous iron balls attached to the ends. The weight was so immense that I couldn't lower my arms. Desperately, I asked those creatures where I was, begging them to let me go. They only laughed, mocking me, showing off their long, razor-sharp nails, ready to tear. Just ahead, I saw a huge, dark, terrifying tunnel emerge, and, unable to resist, I was pulled into it, sliding slowly. The further I went, the heavier the smell became. It was such a repugnant, suffocating, unbearable odor that it made me want to die just breathing. It was as if there was no more air, only that indescribable stench. At the end of the tunnel, I noticed a small light. This sparked hope in me. If I make it this far, I'll be safe, I thought, but to my frustration, as soon as I approached, the light disappeared, and suddenly the demons vanished too. The silence was broken by a deafening sound, as if enormous curtains were violently parted, and then flames burst from the ground, exploding with fire and heat. That was when an authoritative voice, coming from nowhere, ordered, "Go ahead, go in there." I obeyed, trembling with fear. As I crossed that threshold, what I saw was terrifying. Fire everywhere and screams, so many screams. They were screams of pain, despair, and suffering, people crying out, moaning, begging for help. People had been burning there for hundreds, thousands of years. The fire consumed their flesh without stopping. The flesh melted, falling from the bones, until only black, charred skeletons remained. But supernaturally, the flesh began to regenerate, and everything began again. The fire never goes out, and the pain never stops. I also saw worms crawling through people's flesh and bones, eating them relentlessly. Imagine what it would be like if you were alive, watching worms eating your flesh. But there in hell there's nothing you can do. This is eternal torture. I saw teenagers who were there because they had been rebellious, disobedient to their parents. I saw pastors who were in hell because they stole from God, were not faithful in tithing, and deceived the people. I saw Christians who pretended to be servants of God, but inside their homes they lived in sin, hidden, thinking no one saw. Some even repented verbally, but never truly converted. They were lukewarm, and the Bible is clear. God vomits the lukewarm. Therefore, the fire upon them was even more intense. I saw demons torturing these souls in every way possible, including abusing them, sexually abused them. They ripped off their heads, ripped apart their bodies, stabbed them, tore them to pieces, and yet the people didn't die. They felt everything. The pain was eternal. I also saw sorcerers, witches, and occultists, people who had been deceived by Satan, who promised them power, wealth, and kingdoms in this world in exchange for their souls, but it was all a lie. The devil's only interest was to destroy, deceive, and lead their souls to eternal suffering. As I walked down roads filled with fire, I heard screams and people crying out for mercy, promising to change if they were freed. They begged to return and tell the world that hell is real, but it was too late. God, in His mercy, gives many chances, but when we don't take them, this is our fate. I saw many who were there because of hatred, lack of love, and lack of forgiveness. God's word is clear: without love, no one will see God. Without forgiveness, no one will inherit the kingdom of heaven. Everyone was being tormented, burning, without rest, without water, without food, without sleep. Imagine unbearable thirst, extreme exhaustion, but never being able to rest. The torment is endless. The demons tortured day and night without ceasing. As I continued, I came across rivers of fire filled with eyes. They were eyes that stared at me. Then, God revealed to me that they were the souls of people who had lived in homosexuality, lesbianism, and sexual immorality. They were chained in these rivers, rising and falling, screaming, wanting to escape, but it was impossible. It was too late. I also saw burning crosses, where demons used spears and swords to pierce people's private parts. The spears pierced their bodies from the bottom to the chest. These were the souls of people who lived trapped in pornography, masturbation, and uncontrolled sexual desires. As they did this, the demons mocked them, saying, "Stupid people. You believed our lies, you exchanged God for us." I saw many who called themselves Christians there, people who listened more to the devil's lies than to the voice of God, people who lived in sin, deception, and a lack of love and forgiveness. The scenes were soul-chilling, people lamenting, repenting, but it was too late now. They begged for a second chance. They longed to return to earth to live in holiness, to proclaim that God is real, that hell is real, but there was no turning back. I kept moving forward, even though I was overwhelmed by fear, wanting to close my eyes to avoid witnessing that horror again, but some force compelled me to keep looking. The demons were gigantic and powerful, making it impossible to flee or fight them. I observed cells that resembled prisons for those who had committed the most grievous sins, sorcerers and witches tearing at their own flesh and trying to drink the blood that gushed from their intense thirst. They did this because in life they sacrificed humans and animals to drink the blood and eat the sacrificed flesh. In another cell was an old woman whose features changed constantly. This was how she acted on earth, using demonic powers to destroy Christians and attack churches. Just as there are earthly prisons, there are cells down there. When he commit crimes on earth, demons also have access to torture, burn and do whatever they want to us, without any chance of escape. He continued on to a huge, dark, gloomy room, but he could still hear desperate screams all around him. In the center was a large black coffin surrounded by dancing demons. In the middle of the coffin was a hole near the heart. As they danced, they sang, "We worship you, Satan." The music reminded me of the rock I used to listen to, like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, because rock was created by Satan to worship him. The melody was familiar, but the words were blasphemous, glorifying Satan. The demons, dancing in a circle, constantly thrust objects into that hole, eliciting incessant screams. Inside the coffin was a pastor convicted of robbing God by not giving his tithes. Many Christians also rob God by not giving what belongs to him. God is not an employee, he is a king, and we must give him what is his with love. This pastor owned mansions, Rolex watches, and luxury cars, but now he was being eternally tortured by demons. I continued and saw many crosses with people tortured for practices such as masturbation, pornography, and also hypocrisy. God despises hypocrites who do good deeds just to be seen by others, while their hearts overflow with hatred. Some Christians even pray to God to remove people they dislike, as if God would answer such selfish prayers. God is love, and we need to love sincerely. I have also witnessed men and women suffering punishment for lust, fornication, adultery, pornography, and impure sexual desires that are snares of the enemy. God created marriage to be pure and holy, but many desecrate it, engaging in abominable practices, even sex with animals. I have also seen parents who fail to educate their children spiritually and lead them to Christ. Because of this negligence, they ended up condemned to hell. As I climbed a very high hill, I could no longer stand it. My mouth was dry, and I longed for water as I felt the fire and heat were unbearable. Upon reaching the top, everything closed in behind me, leaving me completely traumatized and with no idea of what would happen. Suddenly, a majestic angel appeared, 6 feet tall, with blonde hair, no wings, dressed in white clothes, and holding a large sword. He called my name until I finally responded. He asked if I knew where I was, and when I said no, he explained that this was hell, the place where I would spend eternity if it were my time. He asked, who was my God? And I remembered the Christians Ronnie and Mike, who often took me to church and spoke of the love of Jesus. When I mentioned Jesus, the angel commanded me to shout the name of my God. When I shouted Jesus, the name echoed through the hellish tunnels, and I immediately returned to my body, terrified and breathless. Upon returning, I begged the Lord for forgiveness, deeply repentant of my sins. That same night, I felt an intense vibration running through my body, from head to toe. Since then, 19 years ago, God has completely freed me from drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, and sin. We are not perfect, but when we love God, we learn to hate sin as He hates. Sin is repulsive, like a dog returning to its own vomit. God hates sin, but loves us deeply. Since that night, I have lived in the presence of the Lord. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you are not subscribed, subscribe to the channel for new content. Also, share this video with more people. God bless you.